Welcome to Capitol Theater Conversations, Community Edition. This series of educational and informative offerings is made possible by the generous support of our sponsor, the law firm Capuzzo PLLC, with additional support from Baker Boyer Bank, Fresh Hop Group, G.H. Moen LLC, the Moen family, Red and Carolyn Ramsey, Yakima Sunrise Rotary, and from donors just like you. Welcome back, or if this is your first time, welcome to another Capitol Conversations Community Edition. I am thrilled to have the guests that we have this time because they are people who truly know the history behind the Capitol Theater, especially the last 40 years. And I am thrilled to welcome to this conversation Frank and Mary-beth Bradley. Hello, Frank and Mary-beth, and how are you today?
Hi.
Hi, good afternoon.
Thank you. I am so excited to share this because, like I said, you guys have been part of this for so long, but neither of you are actually from Yakima, if I understand that correctly. What brought you to town?
I went through high school here, then spent a little time, and then was gone for a lot of years and moved back in 1974. And
interesting, the year before the fire.
Exactly. And my introduction, if you will, to the new Capitol Theater versus the movie theater that I went to at high school evolved through my being on the Allied Arts Council board. We received a letter from the city of Yakima informing us that they had purchased the theater from the Mercy family and wondered what our input would be on what they should do with this new theater that they just purchased. And from that, the Allied Arts Council Board created an entity called the Capitol Theater Committee. And I was involved for the first eight years as the president of the Capitol Theater Committee, and the Allied Arts Council Board was really the advisory to the Capitol Theater Committee during the initial stages. And the Capitol Theater Committee involved people in Yakima that were interested in the arts. Walter and Peggy Lewis, for example, were prime parts of this particular committee. And we negotiated a contract with the city to assign responsibilities for running the Capitol Theater. And that deal was signed and everybody was happy. And we hired the first Capitol Theater manager, a man by the name of Tom Tomlinson. He lived in Spokane at the time and came to Yakima, and within a very short time, I think a few weeks, he saw his job burned to the ground, because that's when the Capitol Theater ceased to exist for a period of time.
So the structure was all in place, and then, lo and behold, fire.
Yes.
Wow.
The initial game plan was to run it as an Allied Arts or an arts theater for Yakima.
Mm-hmm.
And then things changed with the fire, of course. And
as they do, yes, indeed. Now, was it the case then, or was it the intention that the Allied Arts would be more involved as time went along with it, but then the fire shifted, or did they continue to have an engagement and an involvement even through the restoration process?
The Capitol Theater Committee was independent at that point in going forward from the Allied Arts Council.
Now, Mary-beth, if I remember correctly, you're a California girl.
I am. I'm from San Jose.
Say that again for me?
I'm from San Jose.
Got it. And kicking and screaming the whole way, or had you heard enough about family and the valley that you were more than willing to make the shift?
Kicking and screaming, kind of. Frank and I met in Seattle and were married in Seattle. And I remember our first visit to Yakima. And we were coming down over the ridge, and it was windy. And there were all these tumbleweeds going across the highway. And I said to Frank, I've never seen tumbleweed before. And we're moving here. So
I had such a similar experience driving in. I love that.
Yeah. But so that's my story of how we got here. I followed him.
Indeed. Frank, you, of course, as you said, grew up in the region. You born elsewhere, moved here, went through high school. What are your earliest memories of the Capitol, either as a theater or as a cinema?
Well, it was a movie theater for me, and I don't recall any. I don't know whether the Mercies used the theater during my time period, late 40s, early 50s,
Got it.
or anything other than just a movie theater.
And then, Mary-beth, you came to town, and what are your earliest memories short of the fire? I mean, are there things that before that happened that you were most impressed with, or was it still such a development stage at that point?
It was in the development stages, and really there was nothing going on there. You know, it had stopped being a movie theater and was just sitting there waiting for somebody to come up with some great ideas. So no, I didn't, I'd been inside, but that was all.
Yeah.
And I do have to say something about the night that the theater burned. It was my birthday, the night of, and we had been to Bootsy and Stuart Siemens, who you will hear a lot about in this conversation, for dinner and with some other friends. And the phone rang not too much after we got home, well, about 1 in the morning, and it was Bootsy. And she said, Frank, you better get down here, the theater's burning.
Oh.
And the conversation that evening had been about the theater because all of the people who were there were involved.
So I'd love to hear a little bit more. You've mentioned a couple names, but who were those really specific major players? I mean, really awesome civic leaders that saw potential beyond a parking lot post-fire. What all do you remember from that period? And who was involved?
My recollection, and the most important and key part of this, was there was a meeting, Ted Robertson, it was in his office, as a matter of fact. And that meeting included him, obviously. Herb Frank was there. Walter Lewis was there. John Bloxam was there, as was Fred Villacongee and Bud Snyder. There may have been other people there as well, but I don't recall.
And for the youngest among us, then Robertson, he's the person for whom the Robertson Room is named. Am I correct? He was with the Yakima Herald?
He owned the Yakima Herald prior to its being sold out.
Great. Herb Frank, what was his background?
In the fruit business, and he was very, very active in the arts community.
Got it. We had a Bloxam in there, and that was Jack Sr.?
Yes, Jack's father.
Jack's father, also in the fruit business. And then the other names you said?
Fred Villacongee, who was an attorney in town, and Bud Snyder, Snyder's Bakery.
Got it.
Yeah.
And you said Walter Lewis, of course, he and Peggy. Walter, what was his background?
He had a company called Yakima Pine Products here in Yakima. He described it as receiving wood pieces and gluing them together. They made doors and windows.
A bit self-deprecating. I love that. And then you said the Siemens as well.
He was a securities broker and part of the Lee Seaman family and the clothiers back in the day.
So we have all these extraordinary people, from such varied backgrounds and all the skill sets we need. What were then the biggest challenges to getting it really off the ground?
Well, getting people with personal commitments to other arts projects to subordinate them to what the Capitol Theater. And this group concluded that was the primary, most important issue at this time. So they said, let's do it. And that group is strong enough that when they decide to do something, they're going to do it.
So Mary-beth, clearly it wasn't just the men doing all of this. All the spouses I know were all involved in this process as well. Share your thoughts as well and the difference that it made to create this in the community.
Absolutely. All the spouses were involved, and there were many dinner parties, dinner greetings, whatever you want to say, that went long into the night discussing all the possibilities. These Siemens and the Lewises and the Rashes. It was really a group project. But one of the things that was decided, and when we lived in Seattle, I'd been involved with the Seattle Symphony Women's Group. And clearly, not to be sexist, but if you want to get the job done, you got to get the ladies involved.
Amen. To this day.
Yes. So Marie Halverson was asked to form a group, and I believe we already had a name, called Backstage. And in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, she had that organized, and 25 members, enthusiastic about the theater, which was so precious to this community.
Yeah.
And Backstage was to be responsible for decor / upkeep of the theater, social events, including the gala, which was a great event that everyone looked forward to every year.
Yeah.
But most importantly, they were also part of selecting the season. That fell by the wayside. I don't remember how many years in, but for a long time, it was collaboration between the director and Backstage. So they had a big part in everything that was done, and they were a busy group, let me tell you.
Right up until the time that I came, they sort of disbanded at that point, but such a huge difference. And I love looking back at the old pictures and the galas with their various themes. You also, of course, were involved in galas along the way as well.
The gala really was one of the biggest events of the theater year. And guests could preview the coming season with numbers and so forth, featuring the many, many talents that we have in this valley.
Yeah.
And it was just something to look forward to. And of course, that night you could sign up for the season.
Yeah, the season preview that we now do is hearkening back to that so clearly. And I love the fact that it's been part of the history of the facility.
Another thing I wanted to mention was at the same time, there was another organization supporting the arts called Patrons of Music that were supporters of the symphony.
Yeah.
They also had social events and after performance parties and so forth. There were a lot of newcomers to the theater and to the community. And I think that Patrons of Music and Backstage provided an opportunity for all these people who had maybe come from larger communities who missed the arts. And it was a great way for them to meet and gather with other people who enjoyed the arts. One of the things that I felt was really important for our community was the development of programs for the Hispanic audience. Very well received, very well attended, and much appreciated and beloved by the Hispanic community.
And certainly that is a focus that we're working on, and thrilled that we have as many people in the community as engaged, even interest within the board participation and committee participation, because getting the Latinx voices, at all levels of the organization is so important. Yes. Okay, you guys have been patrons, you have been donors, you've been volunteers, you have done all this for so long and so appreciated. If you had a magic wand and, other than just actually being able to have live performances with audiences again, what would you hope to see in the future for the Capitol Theater?
Well, my focus and primary interest has always been on program and bringing in performances that are similar to what you get in Seattle and other places.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope comes back.
And for you, is that musical theater specifically? Is there a variety of genres that you like to see, or various disciplines?
A variety, but primarily music. Yeah.
Great. How about you, Mary-beth?
Well, I'd like to see, when we come back, maybe putting a play in once in a while. I think people talk about that and say, wouldn't it be great? We love the musical theater, but it would be really great to see some plays as well. It's a possibility that maybe we could do some local productions. Since we no longer have all of the options that we once had for local performers.
Right.
We've got some very talented people in this community, as you know.
Indeed. And I'm just so thrilled that Warehouse, for example, has its own facility now with plans to expand as well, so that they can do even more in the space, and owning their own space in this way, really, like when they had the Allied Arts facility available to them.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course the number of recitals that we do, and how much it's important for the kids to have their first Capitol Theater stage moment, and how people share that, years and years later.
It's a very big deal to kids, and their eyes just sparkle. I was on the Capitol Theater stage.
I just want to thank you both so much for taking the time and sharing your thoughts. For all of us who weren't there firsthand, who didn't have all that, but are so grateful for all the hard work that you put in. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for taking the time and sharing with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And to everyone out there, we want to, thank you for sticking around, joining us in this conversation. We want to thank our sponsors, and please keep in mind to stay connected while we're all mindfully keeping apart. See you next time.